believe that once I really understood, and I've always had a belief in a higher power, but once I actually kind of like did what you said, which is like, hey, I'll show up, you tell me what to do. My life has literally dramatically changed.
Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. It's Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. And, you know, I always say it, but it's so true. I have another amazing and special guest joining me today. So what I like to do, Brandon, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then you and I are going to rock and roll.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me again. Like I said, it means the world to be able to, get myself out there and to meet with more people like yourself. So a bit small backstory of myself. So I'm currently I own a mural agency based out of Salisbury, Maryland. I've now been in this business for roughly about 5 to 6 years, and it wasn't always an agency. And what the agency actually is now is we've transitioned from it just being myself and my partner painting to now we actually hire, mentor, and apprentice other artists in the area, specifically those who do not have large scale experience with public art, so we can actually take people to the new level. So, if muralists reach out to us, we're humbled to be able to speak with them. We sometimes might work, but we're really looking for those people who are essentially from the studio when you're trying to take them into the street. That's like our main forte. And, I've had last year was our most successful year. I'm very humbled and appreciative of the position we've got in our business too. Within the community specifically, but it definitely was not always this way. Before this, it was just like a typical, like most artists, where I'm just basically trying to figure out how to actually make a decent amount of money with my artwork. And even before that, I, essentially kind of had I wouldn't even say essentially kind of, I had a pretty deep substance abuse issue, roughly stemming from like my young adolescent teenage years all the way into almost being 30 years of age. And that had a huge stifling effect on my creativity. And I truly believe, honestly, if I didn't have those issues, have that addiction, that I don't think I would be as strong or as resilient as I am today. It was having a lot of those challenges of just being, waking up and not knowing if I even wanted to get out of bed that day, not knowing if I, feeling unworthy and just not having the oomph that I have now. It really did cause me to basically go deep inside and kind of like figure out what it is that I wanted to do with this, with myself and the world. And luckily I had something, maybe called an angel. I don't know what you want to call it, but I had a lot of good stuff on my side that was, I think, working for me, to where I had, I always had this voice in my head saying, you're capable of so much, you're capable of much more than this. And I truly believe if I didn't have the creative ideas that I had deep down, I don't think I would have gotten out of that stuff. And it was me knowing that these things were essentially holding me back from being creative. I just didn't care. I had no expression. It was just pulled right out of me, sucked right out of me, that I realized I'm meant to do much more than this. So, once I essentially got over a lot of those, shackles, if you will, or got out of them, a lot more started blossoming. Of course, life wasn't, even though I got rid of that stuff, a lot of the mindset stuff continued with me, to where, feeling unworthy or not feeling like I was good enough, or feeling as if I'm stuck in the comparison trap, or just, the things that kind of come with just programming your brain to, basically not experience happiness, and to be a lot more intimidated and scared and kind of like fearful of a lot of stuff. And slowly but surely, I, began bringing about people into my world that I feel like were very good, assets and tools and friends and all sorts of things that could allowed me to actually be who I was intending to be in this world. And I got to see some really cool, amazing people around me. What really changed the game for me was seeing people slowly but surely relying on the community around them in order to elevate their own goals and to work with the community. And once I made that pivot and realized that I can do this with my own business and my own endeavors, and I started anchoring my designs around nonprofits, around municipalities, around businesses, to see what we could accomplish together, and started asking for help and started doing things like that, my life dramatically changed. And last year, I'm proud to say, I published my very first book, and I felt driven to do that because I read, if it wasn't for the books I read, the people I had a chance to talk to, and the podcasts I watched, I don't think I would have developed a lot of the mindsets that I have. So that was kind of my gift to the world, to one, just to express myself and to see what I really believed and to kind of hone in on some of the thoughts that I had. But then more so, I just wanted to actually share the things that I've learned over time. And, a lot of that stuff are some of the thoughts and mindsets that I've developed over the years. They were kind of always there, but they were just missing a few little pieces here and there. And once I kind of like really realized that a lot of this stuff was completely up to me and how I looked at the world and how I identified with it, the game changed for me. And life is so much more fulfilling. It's still challenging at times, of course, but I know I now conquer and take care of these things with much more of a positive attitude.
Well, you said one thing that's very key, and we'll go back and talk about the addiction part, right? Because like you said, with addiction, it sucks the life out of you, right? And the people around you, right? And this is what I want you to understand, audience. If you listen to what he said, right? And I'm not plugging anything here but one thing, right? Because the opposite of addiction is connection. You found community, right? You sought community, right? So, but that's why I tell the clients I work with, right, whether it's in a facility or one-on-one, I said, you don't have to do this alone, right? Go find, like, if you go to AA or NA, do it because you're around like-minded people that want to stay clean and sober, right? You don't have to like it, just give it a shot, right? And you kind of showed that in a different route, right? You said, I knew I couldn't do this alone, but I found my community, and here I am, right? A published author, a wonderful artist, right? That, because if you hear him, everybody, he's talking about, he didn't do this on his own. He went out, asked for help. He got into the community, right? He found his path to recovery. So, like, you're like me, right? I didn't get sober until I was 32 years old. You know what I mean? And it took some pretty brutal, hard lessons for me to go, oh, this is not fun anymore. I better do what the judge says, right? But talk about those times, like, and tell the people, right? Because we can change at any given moment, right? And you know what I mean? Because if we're still stuck, I know in my addiction, if I was still stuck, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today, Brandon, because I'd be sitting in a, like, 6x9, as they say, right? Going, darn, I wish I was on that podcast with Brandon, right? Sharing his story. But, like, what led to what were some of the circumstances when you were younger that you said, I'm going to go this route, right? And then, like, what was that pivotal moment when you said enough was enough? I got to change.
I generally, I've asked myself those questions a lot. You're not the first one to ask me. Looking back, I mean, at the time, I felt like I had a very easy upbringing. It seemed like it was compared to other people, I thought I was like kind of like living the dream. But looking back, I could see that I was experiencing extreme trauma in the household that I wasn't really identifying with at the time. Like, my parents essentially argued 24/7. They really didn't have much of an emotional connection to each other. And I basically was kind of left to my own vices all the time. My parents essentially fed me with like sugar and video games and TV. So there was the dopamine stuff right there. So
Right.
I knew I was like, growing up, originally I went to a private school, and, don't do drugs was like a big thing. And I had no interest and no intention to do so. It wasn't until I moved to like a new area that essentially, all of a sudden I'm 14 years of age, and people started asking me if I wanted to, smoke. And I was like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. And I really have no good explanation as to why I said yes one day. But the moment I said yes, it basically took me down the path of, oh, like, this was generally fun. And as you know, fun turns into not so fun, and it doesn't take but so long. But it wasn't until I was, let's fast forward about 5-6 years or so, I'm in my early 20s. And for some reason, just like the moment when I was 14, I decided to smoke, I tried, other stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, this wasn't anything like what I was told or what I expected. This is fun. And since there's the rabbit hole right there, essentially I just basically got addicted. Mainly opiates were my issue right there. And it basically, at the time I thought I was using it to, have fun. I mean, and to like basically get, it was exciting. It was new. It allowed me I skateboarded a lot. I was a musician, so it allowed me to kind of pursue those paths with a lot more kind of vigor at the time. then it quickly didn't, quickly turned into, of course, I don't feel like skateboarding. I don't want to make any music. I just want to do this thing.
Right.
And it was the pulling of like the expression of myself that I was slowly battling with over the years where I'm like, man, this is like completely changing who I am. And it took years and years to recognize that. But it wasn't until like I was a closet user for a lot of people. Like some of my close friends knew, but for the most part, I've been in the same area for a long time. People really didn't know. So I'm interacting with friends, family, children, and I'm sitting there like, in the state of mind that I'm in, and I'm like feeling guilty on one hand, another hand, I'm like, I can't, I'm just not even thinking about it. It's just so normal. And then I knew really it was like, this is not normal at all. And luckily I started finding myself around, some of the, I mean, I can get into like typical dark days, where
Yep.
you're out of something, you don't have something, or even having all the stuff you need, but basically having the literal dopamine, serotonin, all those depletion of all those chemicals that you need to feel like you're actually
Right.
a human. They were just completely absent. So because of that, I just remember just feeling like as bad as I could get. And my parents, I was able to go to them and bring this stuff up, but because they didn't have any addiction issues, they didn't even know what to say. And in my dad's eyes, just like growing up, oh, he makes good grades. Nothing can be wrong with him. And then when I'm an adult, oh, well, you have a full-time job and you do well and you have friends. Can't be that bad. And they didn't really realize how much pain I had deep down. But only
Right.
it's one of those things, only I really got the chance to see it. And like I said, I'm fortunate that I found myself in many situations. And I had an older brother who really didn't fall into these types of addictions to where I had some sort of outside comparison that I could see, like, like, man, like he's outgoing. He wants to talk to people. He wants to do this. And I didn't want to do half that stuff. And I just
Right.
saw myself just basically not succeeding. I luckily had ambition and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just knew that I was capable of a lot. And I truly think if I didn't have, God willing, like some of those random ambitions, like this, the ambitious spirit that I had, if I didn't have that, I don't even know if I would have even tried to want to like try to stop.
Right.
And it just got to the point where I'm around enough people that are accomplishing their goals and just seeing stuff happen that I realized I'm like, man, if I can do this sort of stuff still using, what would it be if I didn't do this? And then I got to the point where I started having a family. Now all of a sudden, you know what I mean? I'm like, it just got to the point where I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I just gotta stop. Because one thing, I won't get too specific into stuff, but we come up with all sorts of excuses as to, well, this substance isn't as bad as this one, or if I only do it this time of day, if I only do it
Right.
here, then it can't be but so bad, or if they don't know. And I'm just playing these games with myself and everybody, and ultimately I'm like, I don't know who I am. So I just
Yeah.
have to
I
stop.
remember those days, right? If you do it, I'm not as bad as you if I do it this way, but you're doing it that way. I heard, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to laugh at, and then I turned in one of those people like, I don't care now. Like, I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it. But I can so relate to that, right? Like, especially, I was kind of opposite. My brother was like you, right? And I was the outgoing jock, right? Knew everybody. But when I switched and got into my addiction, then it was like, I'm the, opposite, and then anyway, God rest his soul, my brother, right? Because I remember when I was just getting started, and that feeling, right? And when somebody says a certain thing, it sticks with you for the rest of your life, right?
Sure.
So I was like early in my addiction, but it wasn't bad, right? Because I was still working, I was functioning, right? Like, and he pulled me aside one day because my brother was starting to get in trouble, right? And he goes, "Look, bro, you're going to start on vacation and end up on probation. Be careful."
Mm.
And I blew him off, right? Well, what happened, right? I was looking at 3 years in prison. That was my bottom, or one of the things that said, I got to change, right? Like, I've destroyed, my mom doesn't trust me. No one wants me around. You know what I mean? Like, I get what you're saying, right? But part of me was still going, but if I do it when no one's watching, I'm not hurting anybody, right?
Sure.
Like, I'm only hurting myself, right? But as we know, there's people watching us and we're hurting them without,
Plus, you're changing. Your whole dynamic of who you are is changing, and you
oh,
might not be. And everybody else can feel it, whether they know why or what's going on. It's just who you are deep down is like literally now it's being buried by some other thing. So you're not even fully expressing yourself as like who you're meant to be in this world, and that does
absolutely.
it does, as you know now, it affected everybody.
Absolutely. Right. It buries your true authentic self and just starts
Mhm.
layering things that like, I'm sure you went through it. I said I would never do certain things. I ended up doing it. Right. Like,
Yeah, oh
oh,
yeah.
oh man. But,
Oh
but
yeah.
see, I'm glad you're sharing that. Right. Because I mean, some are more creative than others. Right. But here's the thing that like I've noticed, not only as a sober dude, right, but a counselor who works in the field, right,
Mhm.
is like you really creative people like yourself, right? Like, yeah, they went through a rough time, but it seems like once they came out of it, oh my God, like their creativeness it expands to a whole different level. You know what I mean?
I generally believe a lot of, I mean, people from all sorts of walks, all walks of life, people can struggle with it, a multitude of things, especially
Right.
addiction. But I noticed a lot of creatives seem to go down these like kind of dark paths. And I think so. I think a lot of it deals with like the fear of like literally expressing yourself. And
Right.
if you can, you want to express yourself, you don't even understand sometimes that that's what you're trying to do, but you basically are in fear of doing that. Well, then guess what? If there's this thing that you can use as a coping mechanism, which you're not even aware that that's why you're using it, you now feel like you have a place in this world and you're okay.
Right.
And I did go to rehab back in I think like 2013 or 2014, and it was an amazing opportunity for me. It didn't completely change the game for me, but I remember meeting, it was the first time in my adult life that I was around completely sober people. And I remember, one, I was sober myself, but two, I'm just sitting there like, man, like people are amazing, like generally absolutely amazing. And they're capable of like so much stuff. And you can just, I'm hearing the stories of everybody. I'm like, dude, this is insane. But like we are suppressing ourselves. And it's like a good reflective tool to be able to see like other people and what they're going through. And it takes sometimes more than one kick in the butt in order for you to change. But seeing what other people are capable of, and then hearing about how like, oh, I like doing this, but I do that, and you hear that, oh, you haven't written music in 10 years, or you haven't done this in X amount of time, but you've been using every dang day. It's
Right.
like, one, who would you have become if you didn't actually fall into the grips of that stuff, And I don't know.
Absolutely. And it's something to say for the people in the meetings or wherever you go, right? The ones that say if you put half the effort into staying sober and doing what you were meant to do, like you did your using, like you're gonna be amazing, right? And people would tell me that, and I would just look at him, Brandon, like, are you sure you didn't use something? Because you don't know me very well, do you? Right. But it's
Yeah,
true though, right? Like, I didn't ever thought I always used to tell I'm not creative, right? But this is my creative outlet is bringing
yeah,
guys like you on here and showing the world people who have gone through the ringer, let's say, come out the other side and are amazing people, and I love doing this, right? And having guests like you on here to share how you made that decision to get sober, right? Because I always say on here, I don't push anything, right? But I want people to pay attention to the people who have come through here that are in recovery or who decided one day that was enough, right? I'm tired of living the lie. I've hurt so many people. And then now we're helping so many other people with like what you do or whatever, or coaching or whatever the case may be, right? Because I think, I mean, you understand it. I understand it. Like, I'm sure you've had those times where you thought, like, I'm going to die today. This is not good. But then, you wake up the next morning and you're like, I'm doing it all over again. Right. And you
dude.
think to
Yeah, I've
think
had
to
a few.
yourself, like, what am I
I've had a
doing?
few I've had a few physical scares to where I assumed I was like I might not make it through the night, and you think that would terrify me enough, but it didn't. But I want to touch on something you said, which is like you're not artistic, but you have this creative outlet, and that's what I don't talk too much about that in the book that I wrote, but I kind of express that, which is like at the end of the day, we're creators, and you are still using your mind creatively to whatever way in which you choose to use it. And by even coaching people, working with them, and learning how to communicate, like using your voice is one of the most creative ways to express the self. So even though I might do it through like sometimes a painting, or I might do it by designing something on the computer, like I try to like tell people all from all walks of life, like you still create and you use your brain creatively. It just might not be in the physical expression that so many people are identifying with. But I think once people realize that what they're doing is still providing equal value, It's not the same, it's a different thing, but it's equally as important, especially giving people those who actually do use their voice and those people who actually are, in the position where like they're helping other people leverage their unique talents. You know what I mean? That still takes a creative mind to know how to, to learn how to, again, work within the community itself. It takes a certain type of person. And I think everybody is capable of their own form of this. It's just whether or not do they believe it and have they found their kind of unique little calling.
Absolutely. You're right. You're so correct, right? Mine happens to be, substance abuse counseling or work coach, recovery coaching, right? You're right. I look back and I go, wow, I had to get really creative with this person so they could change the way they look at
Yeah.
themselves, right? But I think you're right. I think we all have something we're good at. And it's just one, like you said, it's up to us to either stop the negative self-talk, right? Or whatever's keeping us back and find that creative voice, let's say, right? And then, right, because I believe God has given us all a purpose, right? But it's
Sure.
up to us to find that purpose and what our passion is, right? Um and then share it with the world, right? Because one thing I always tell my clients, right? Or what I said, look, you're one of God's kids. He has no grandchildren, right? And they're looking at me and I go, and he doesn't make junk. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you have something that he wants you to use. I may not be able to help you find it, but you got to dig deep and find what drives you. That, like you said, right? Like you never have to work a day in your life if you love what you do. Like it
You
doesn't,
are, you
right?
said it. You're not a piece. You were born complete,
Right.
And I think so when how the whole art career even came about, like mural opportunities started kind of literally falling into my lap through the grace of God. But because it wasn't what I thought I wanted to do, I sometimes said yes, I sometimes said no. Or once a job was done, I said, good riddance. I'm going to go do what I want to do, which was essentially
Right.
try to figure out either how to make music or I'm just working on, I'm at a marketing position. I'm just working on their company. And it got to the point where I'm like, I literally, and I'm glad you brought up God, but it literally made me realize, I'm like, no, like I've been asking for certain things. And the way in which I'm being chosen to be used or utilized in this world is through this thing. And once I kind of made that connection and I started like, I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna, I don't wake up and do everything I feel like I want to do. I just wake up and do what I feel like I'm called to do. And as soon as I started doing that, life literally got out of the way and like it started working for me. And like if I could inspire somebody to even think a certain way, it would be that whatever it is that you think you want to do, that might not be the thing that's meant for you to do. And be open to what life keeps throwing to you that you're maybe ignoring or you keep closing the door on, because it's oftentimes, like once we drop our ego and we say like, okay, like, what do you want from me? Life, like, what is there for me? And it's the thing that's presented itself without you trying to actually, maybe go down that path. It's there. It's like, just like the addiction stuff, the fact that you're in what you're in. And I used to really want to do that. Like when I was in a rehab, some of the most beautiful souls I met were those people that were working there. And I'm just sitting there like, man, like you're still like, and I'm so grateful to be able to speak to you about this stuff because it's years beyond me and it's out of my life that sometimes I forget. I generally forget that I had a problem, and it makes me go like, man, like I don't want to forget because I'm in an area where I still see people with problems. And if I
Right.
didn't actually have this problem and get out of it, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I'm actually grateful for the issues that I had and for the stuff that I did. And I want other people, like instead of having the guilt of, maybe using in the past or even still using, like just knowing that like you're completely fine, you're complete, you've got everything you need. You just got to get out of your own dang way.
Exactly. That's why I came up with a quote that I love. It might be similar to somebody else's, but I'm claiming it as my own, right? But I always tell my clients too, you have everything you need to be great today. Period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cool.
Like you just have to do the work, right? And luckily for me, I became unafraid to do that work after my last relapse, right? I'm like, okay, God, whatever you need me to do, you keep me sober, God, I will do the work to stay sober. Over 21 years later, here I am still, right? And I'm having this
Wow.
awesome conversation with Brandon.
Congrats.
But you get it, right? Because that's what, if we can just get, there's what's why, like I said, and some of the cliches they might be cliche, but they resonated with me once I learned what they meant, right? Like the how of the AA program, right? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So when my sponsor like defined it for me, like what it meant, where I could understand it, I get it. I just had to be honest with myself and others.
Hmm.
Keep an open mind, right? I'm not going to be the same person that I was when I got here, and then
Yeah.
be willing to do something different for myself, right? And change some behaviors and the way I look, like you said, the way I look at the world, change my perspective, right? Because I've heard it so many times from mentors in the program and my sponsors, like, you got a disease of perception, right? If you can change
Oh,
your perception, right, you're going to see things differently, and thank God I was honest, and I continue to be honest, open-minded, and willing, right? And God opens my eyes, and right, because I thank him every day. And this, hopefully I'm not offending anybody talking about God, but I'm just telling you, like, I wouldn't be here with Brandon today or with you guys in the audience if I hadn't done that. I'd have been the same closed-minded, like I was telling
I
Brandon, I might have been in a 6x9 going, God, I wish I had a podcast. I'm hearing all these podcasts, and I wish that was
man,
me.
I
You know?
when I was 22 years old, I got arrested myself. I only spent a night in jail, but I was facing felonies. It was for cannabis possession, but being near a school. Um, Long story short, I knew when I was in that 6x9. It was a little bit bigger than that, but I was in that thing. And I look over and on the wall, there's like some people wrote some stuff. And I literally knew I was never going to go back there. Now, I never got my stuff together, but I attribute everything, even if I say I'm thankful for my parents and my brother, they still came from a place that I know is beyond me. And I generally believe that once I really understood, and I've always had a belief in a higher power, but once I actually kind of like did what you said, which is like, hey, I'll show up, you tell me what to do. My life has literally dramatically changed. And like I said, I now accept challenges for I'm excited to take a challenge. I'm excited to be, the idea of fear now is not like a scary thing. I'm like, okay, this is intimidating. This makes me a little nervous. Good. That means I'm going to be stronger and I'm going to grow after it. But I
Right.
truly believe if I didn't, if these things didn't come to me, I think everybody's purpose is to basically be uncomfortable at times and to find situations that are healthy, that makes them uncomfortable. And I think that's why a lot of people end up using is because they are just generally, they don't like being uncomfortable. They don't like trying new things. They definitely don't like failure. And it's like if you get comfortable with those things that make you uncomfortable, which cause you to ultimately grow, which is basically life throwing situations and circumstances at you that are meant to basically make you more, you realize that like, okay, like the only way that happens is by actually experiencing like struggle and strife and challenges and like, literally being like, why is this happening to me? Or woe is me. Like that's the only way you actually end up developing like a strong character. And I think it's like, a lot of addicts, unfortunately, like, that's like something that they're generally afraid of. And they'll still experience it in one way, shape, or form, but they're doing it now with the coping mechanism of having, instead of like a higher power or their own internal power pushing through it, they have like a substance that's basically causing them to basically get through it. Like how many people actually use before they, I was in the sauna the other day and I heard college kids talking about one kid saying like, he has a presentation in a few days and the guy's like, how do you get through them? He's like, well, I just take a shot or two beforehand. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that is so common.
Yep.
And that's, and it's like, that'll become, hopefully that doesn't get worse, but if that becomes normal, that's what he's going to end up doing for who knows how long in order to actually get through those uncomfortable moments.
Right. Exactly. And I think about it, right? And when I was in my addiction and thought I was like a badass, right? A
Mhm.
badass. Literally, though, I was the opposite. I was afraid of everything, right? I had to
Yeah,
show everybody that, you know what I mean?
sure. Yeah.
And but like you said, right? Like when you it's like David Goggins. I don't know if you've read,
Yes, I do.
right?
Yeah.
He's all about learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I say it all the time. Yes, he's the extreme, right? None of us here. I don't know about you. I can't speak for you, Brad, but I'm not going to go run a 50-mile run and till
No,
my
he is an
toenails are
exception.
falling off and I'm
Sure.
but
Yeah.
that's why fearless happiness, right? When I came up for that title for my book and the podcast, I was like, Are we truly going to be fearless? No. But what I want to teach people through my guests is how they, even when they were afraid, they decided to go after that better version of themselves, right? Even
Yeah.
that fear of the unknown, right? That's what this, and the resilience that comes with it. And just, the badasses, like I say, like you, like, that I get to interview is just, it's been a gift, right? And you nailed it, right? Because sometimes you just got to go, okay, it's something bigger than me. I got to do it anyway, right? Because I'm going to get stronger for doing it, right? Yes, I'm going to get very uncomfortable. I may not like it. I may be cussing Brandon out, right? Brandon, this is your fault. God darn it. And you know what I mean? Like, but when I get to the other side of that, and I've learned a lesson that I think, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, Buddha, whatever, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah.
When you learn that lesson, that's when you look at yourself, wow, it wasn't that bad. It was bad, but it wasn't that bad. Now I know something more about myself, and now I can help someone else who's going through the similar. And that's, for me,
Yes.
what it's
Yep.
all about, right? Is,
Yep.
oh, now I have the experience. If someone comes to me and goes, hey Max, I'm afraid, I'm going through this, and I can put my arm around and go, look, you're going to be all right. Just do it. But I'm here to support you along the way, because I've gone through it. So if you need any help or support, let me know. You know what I mean?
That's why I wrote a book. I wrote a book to basically personify that. I'm like, man, like we often do things that we say, I wish somebody had told me, or I wish I had known that. And
Right.
I'm like, man, the purpose, like if you don't learn something, the purpose of learning stuff and going through it isn't just for you.
Right.
It's for the world. So if you had a chance to actually learn something like a lesson, and even if you know that those lessons have already been taught by others, there's certain voices that are only going to resonate with yours. And it's your duty that if you feel compelled to share a message, especially if it's something that you personally went through, you're meant to do it. Even if you only change and help one person, it was meant to be, you know? I mean,
Absolutely. But that's one of those gifts I think that God gives you, right? He put you through that. He got you through it. Now you get to share that experience with someone, and hopefully, but in like in your case, my case, I think when we share that with other people, I think it sets off a ripple effect, and
it
a
does. It
lot of
does.
people are affected and go, oh, we can do it. If they can do it, we can do it.
I try to say that all the time. I'm like, again, you brought the word cliche, but I'm like, I use so many cliches with like when I give like talks and stuff, especially because I started mentoring high school and middle school students last year.
Oh,
And
nice.
I'm like, you're gonna hear so much stuff. I'm sure I'm gonna say things that you've heard before, but it's like, again, like my parents would tell me stuff growing up, and I'd be like, And I look back, I'm like, man, how'd I just listen to that? And it's the same situation. And I look at like, I have children of my own, and I'm like, they are continuously, it's my duty as the outside world to basically put healthy stress on them to make them uncomfortable in a healthy way. Because
Right.
otherwise, it's going to happen anyway. Life's going to throw them stuff. I was sheltered so much as a kid that I remember going into a guidance counselor in a college. I'm 19 years of age, and my dad's with me. And the guidance counselor's like, he literally says, like, he's not going to be here with you tomorrow. And I remember being so shy and so bashful. Like I make my children, a 5-year-old, if he needs a fork at a restaurant, I'm like, you ask for it.
Right.
And make those things normal, but it's something that like scares them so much. But it's like, like that idea of being uncomfortable and safe, that's all up here. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
are going to make yourself comfortable and safe. And then, again, it's hard not to get spiritual with a lot of stuff. But if you know that there's some other thing out there that's got your back, as long as you're open and willing to acknowledge it, then you're okay. You know what I mean? The right stuff will happen,
Absolutely.
and things definitely work out more smooth than had you not had that faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's now going to lead me into like talk about your book, like what it's about exactly. And, those like the special points of your book that you want the audience to know about, so that they can go after this episode, they can go out and get your book and go, I'm going to read this book.
It's titled Positive Mental Artist, and it's like a play on words with the idea of positive mental attitude, so PMA. And it's essentially me realizing that I can keep listening to stuff, I can keep watching tutorials, I can keep listening to podcasts, I can keep reading books, but unless I have a good attitude, all that information is not really worth anything. It wasn't until I lost my mom in 2022, and it was the toughest, definitely the hardest thing I've ever dealt with. And in 2023, a day after my birthday, I was sitting in the car with my brother, and we were about to get lunch, and I basically had like a little breakdown. And I remember just kind of like, I definitely was speaking to a higher power, but I just been like, dude, I don't understand. Like I work harder than anybody. I know I care, and I know I'm not putting anybody down. I'm just saying in my world, I'm like, dude, I'm working harder than anybody I know. I'm
Right.
caring more than I'm care so much. Like, why am I only at this level? And it's like I had this like big zap, and it was like something spoke to me, and it was like, you know, you get what you ask for. You just need to learn to ask for more. Like you're capable of more. Start demanding that stuff from you or from yourself. And sure enough, I literally believed it. And then I put it to the test. That same year, I had a marketing position for 5 years. And basically, on my daughter's 10th birthday, we had a job opportunity come up a few weeks before. It paid really well, and it was a mural opportunity. And I remember asking my daughter, my lady, I'm like, what do you think about dad leaving his position and pursuing this art thing? And they both, with big smiles on their face, were like, yes, for sure. And I basically jumped into that career. From there, I basically had to put my mouth where all my knowledge was, or put my knowledge to the work, to the test, and basically say,
Right.
okay, all the stuff that I know, what do I actually have to do? And I started basically, I just got a notebook out and I said, okay, I know these people. I basically need to reintroduce myself to the world. I need to tell people what I want to do. I need to see if my gift or if my objectives align with theirs, and just figure it out and just trust that this process is going to work out. And sure enough, basically I had a lot of things so slowly, a lot of doors slowly started opening up. I'd say out of every 10 people I reached out to, only one led to an amazing, maybe an actual landed opportunity, but I still had 10 engaging conversations where I got my life changed. I definitely learned stuff, and it changed me for the better, to where I don't even, maybe can't even understand how it took place, or I can't see the results of it directly. The
Right.
point is, that book is a compilation of basically all the stuff I've learned over the years, and how I realized that I just needed fine tuning with some of my thoughts to make stuff happen. And ultimately, it deals with a lot of the stuff that you and I spoke about. With I don't bring up addiction and stuff a lot often, or pretty much at all in that book, but it completely relates to, we are in our own way oftentimes. We
Right.
have all the answers we need. We have all the stuff that we need to make stuff happen. Are we asking enough of ourselves? Are we demanding enough of ourselves? And are we actually trying as much as we can? Because I realized, like, man, even though I'm working hard, I might not be working as smart as I could. I might not be actually thinking as big as I'm capable of thinking. So the book is essentially geared towards creatives, mostly because a lot of creatives, I see it all the time. I'm not making money from my paintings, or I hear limiting beliefs, like my area is too small. Dude, we hit almost $250,000 last year with the mural business in a city of only 35,000 people. That, like, we don't live anywhere remotely big. And I had so many people, even those close to me, who were like, you can't do this full time here, because nobody else did it. And
Right.
again, it was just like I had to listen to that higher voice inside of me. And I kind of touch on stuff like that. I'm trying to make the book as accessible to everybody as I can, but it's like, you know what, even if you don't believe in some sort of higher power or anything like that,
Right.
you are still completely capable of whatever vision you have in your head, seeing it through. The thing is, you just need to basically, and I learned this a while ago, and I'll wrap it up with this little part, but the bigger you think, the bigger you'll actually act. So I read a book not too long ago. I love plugging it. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Handy and Dan Sullivan. That book changed my life. I've read a lot of books, but it basically made me realize, like, the objective of a goal is not to always hit the goal. It's to become more. So you don't want to have to hit a checkbox. The objective is to basically stretch your goals so big that, if you wanted to 2X something, you're going to think of a hundred different ways to make something happen. You might say, I'm going to work twice as hard, or I'm going to do this. But if you say I want to 10X an idea, you literally have to completely rewrite what it is that you're doing in order to accomplish something that's 10 times bigger than yourself. So I started hiring out. I started trusting more about my environment. I started working with my community more. And I basically started really basically saying, like, what am I capable of? And if I have these thoughts in my head, I knew that I could make them in reality, and I'm slowly doing so. And being here is literally a part of that. So I genuinely appreciate it, because I just want to get my voice out there. I want more and more people to know that they're capable of what it is that they see in their mind's eye. And again, something like this is a huge asset for not just myself, but it's for the people out there in the world, because like you said, we all share these stories. We have our own idea of how to speak and communicate, but every now and then you'll hear it said in a different way that it just clicks. And that was my purpose of the book, was this, a lot of that stuff is not unique to the world, but it's just coming from my point of view. And I know it's going to resonate with a certain group of people.
I love it. It's like The Secret, right? But the problem with The Secret, right? They didn't tell you the work you have to do to make that stuff happen, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like
Yeah.
you're taking that part. This is what you got to do to make that stuff happen,
Pragmatic,
right?
logical stuff. Yeah.
Right.
You have to be pragmatic.
But it's true though, if you think about it, right? Like, and you and I know we've gone through the experience. I know when I'm down in the dumps and I'm just so negative, it seems like everything that comes my way is negative. It's because of the energy I'm putting out,
Sure. Yes, sir.
right? The higher
Yep.
power of the universe, it's going to go, I'm going to match that for you so you can see it. It's basically,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I take it now. It's like, this is why I want you to see what you're giving to the world because I'm going to give it back to you so you can see it, right? But when
Yes.
I'm, doing good or even in my struggles, but I got a positive attitude.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I know
That's what
that
it's
if I
about.
keep doing the work, good things are going to happen. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
I'm getting these things where I'm like, oh man, Brandon's coming on my podcast. How cool is that? Like the work's paying off. You know what I mean? And that's the example I give. And like for you, it's your art, right? Like, especially when people, because you sound like me, right? Someone tells me you can't do that. You go, oh, watch me.
Yeah.
You know
You
what I mean?
said
Like,
it. You said it perfectly. Even when this going gets tough or the struggle's there, it's the attitude. Like life's gonna happen to you no matter what. You know what
right.
I mean? And you're gonna have good days, bad days. Like, my objective is to try to stay as neutral as possible. The going gets bad, I try not to feel too bad. It gets real good. I try not to be too high on it. I'm just like, life is life. Like it's all good. And like we were saying, you learn the most oftentimes during the hardships because that builds resilience, that builds your muscle.
Absolutely. Well, tell my audience, what is the name of your book?
Positive mental artist.
Positive Mental Artist. I know we talked about that earlier, but I want them to understand. Cool. So now I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I told you about before we started this, right? So, like I said, this has been an amazing time, Brandon. I mean, thank you for gracing me and my audience with your presence. I've learned a lot. You've provided a ton of value for people to understand that they
Yeah.
have the power to do whatever they want. You're right. It's just a little tweaking of the attitude sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go like fearless. What does fearless mean to you? How does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Fearless means that you're willing to tackle whatever comes your way with a positive attitude.
Awesome. My next question is happiness. And you see, I put a Y in there, right? So I did that for a reason. Knowing I put the Y in there, what does happiness mean to you? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
I would say happiness to me means finding, again, back to having a good attitude when life's just presenting itself to you, because at the end of the day, life's happening and it's ultimately up to us how we actually define what it is that's happening. So happiness to me now it changes every single day. It changes throughout the years. But at this point, it's just basically finding peace with the moment, no matter what's taking place.
Oh, I love that. Peace with the moment, no matter what's taking place. That's huge. You hear that, audience? Man, like I said, this has been an amazing time, Brandon. But if people want to get a hold of you, I don't know, hire you to do some artwork or coaching or get your book, how do they get a hold of you?
I would say the easiest way is to follow me on social media. You can either follow the Positive Mental Artist page. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, but I also have a personal page. It's just Brandon Bell. It's my name, but instead of an O in the word Brandon, it's an X. That way you can easily find me. That's pretty much that way everywhere. And yeah, if you ever want a mural done, you know who to call. And if you're ever interested in learning a little bit more about, maintaining a creative, positive mindset, I got a book for you.
I love it. I love it. Man, this has been a great time, Brandon. I mean, we could probably talk for hours just on
Sounds like it.
on
Maybe have
one
you back on
topic.
one day.
You know what I mean? We'll bring you back we'll bring you back for some more because you just provided me with and my audience with so much fun and value and learning lessons, but you're not quite off the hook just yet. Now I get to ask you my favorite question that I ask of all my guests, and it goes like this. So, Brandon, what is the one piece of advice you would give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
Man, this actually isn't too hard because we pretty much spoke on it. And that is understanding that life is going to happen. And that means whatever comes to you, it's meant for you. And how you handle that. And I would just encourage you to basically define it in a positive light. Then that means if you can do that, you succeeded and you passed the challenge that's basically come across your desk, if you will. So whenever life comes to you, good or bad, keep the good attitude, define it in a way that serves you, makes you stronger and empowers you, because ultimately that's what's going to end up being the result. Positive attitude in, positive effect out, negative attitude in, negative attitude out.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been an amazing time. Thank you so much, Brandon, for joining me today. And you heard him, everybody. If Brandon made you think, if Brandon taught you something, if Brandon made you smile, and my famous, if Brandon made you go, I like that, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. It's Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnajst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.